I was already, very much familiar with your work because I just got all the records. And then we finally met at the Pareto Soul Festival in 2007.
7?
I believe.
Okay.
Could have been 6, but I think 2007. And I think I just introduced me to you, just saying, hey, I'm a fan or something like that. I think that's how we met. I already knew Wayne Jackson a little bit, and Wayne was there too.
Sure.
So he might have made the introduction too. And actually Billy Block I'd met once before here in Nashville too. And he was the drummer on that show.
Right.
So, but maybe you can just talk a little bit. Yeah, well, we met in Pareto, and then.
Yeah, well, that was a wild time because we were booked to do basically a 2 or 3 weeks in Italy with a soul review that I was leading ostensibly for Ellis Hooks, Betty Harris, and Sir Mac Rice. And then
Patty Russo was part of it.
We had a couple other singers. We had Patty Russo, we had Janelle Mosser, we had Billy Block on drums, my wife Sally on bass, Mark T. Jordan on keyboards, and Derek and I forget the name of the other horn player, as well as Wayne Jackson. Who am I forgetting? Anybody?
No, that seems like it.
And it was pretty. All things considered, it was well organized and came off really well. We didn't have lots and lots of time to rehearse, and with most of the artists there, rehearsal is at best a base to work from. It's not really what the show's going to be. So the show with Ellis, since we were playing with him every day from the get-go, was really developed over time. Really was a lot of fun because that was the band growing on stage. And it's a pretty big band to sort of go off script with, but we did, and sometimes, most of the times to our benefit, a few times to our detriment, but sometimes people decide they want to take the reins of the stallion when they're just a background singer. So that was one sort of startling thing. But in any case, we were in Pareto and just had a wonderful couple of shows there with Sir Mac and Betty Harris, and Andreas got to witness this, and we met, and he was the kid and I was the old man, and we hit it off, and I said, well, if you come to America, come visit. And you never know when these things are going to happen, but at this particular time it definitely did.
Yeah, and it was a good show, and I guess Ellis and Patty and Jonah, they also sang behind the others, and then they had their
that was the reason why Janelle and Patty were brought as background singers, and I gave them a couple of their own songs within the set, because the set was a pretty long review almost.
Yeah.
But
and you'd just done records with Sir Mac Rice and with Betty Harris too.
Oh yeah. And I'd actually done one with Janelle that was in the can, and I'd started writing with Patty. So we had a few recordings done. I figured, we have a relationship here, and at least, we have beginnings of a musical friendship with most of the people there. So it should be fairly easy, and it's never as easy as you think it's going to be, but on a musical level, most nights it was a really positive thing. We had a great time, and the audiences loved us.
Yeah. So. And I think Wayne was kind of really glad to be there too. It was probably not the easiest time for him because it was after Andrew Love had retired from the road, and his health was, was somewhat declining, but he was like glowing. Not once he was up on stage.
Oh, he was so happy to see his underpants hanging at that bar. The Wayne Jackson official underpants really couldn't believe they survived since the last time he was there. So he was happy about that.
Yeah.
So we had a great time, and then you came over. What was it? The next year?
The following year, I think, and I had your email, so I think I sent you an email asking if I could come see you and Sally, and so you invited me to your house, and somewhat to my surprise, we ended up writing a song or a couple songs, and I was still fairly green when it came to co-writing, so you were the first person basically opening not only your door, but also kind of like, letting me collaborate. And that was certainly a great learning experience for me when didn't necessarily have that much to bring to the table as far as being a good co-writer.
Well, I thought you had good stuff, and I was just trying not to be too much of a bully, because I can be a bit of a bully at times in a co-writing session, just because I like to finish the song, and there are a lot of people who like to write the song more than they like to finish the song. So, I like to keep sight of the fact that you're writing the song, and the idea is to come away with something. Yeah. But I think we did well. We came up with some good things.
Yeah, I think we wrote like 3 songs in that first, I don't know if that day, but in that period. And I got to record some of those, and it was also just really interesting to see kind of how you work, because just by listening to your record, I think you kind of get a pretty good idea what your aesthetic is, but you don't quite get to to see behind how you work.
Nobody knows how sausage is made, but everybody loves to eat it. And,
yeah.
And there is no wrong way, and my way is definitely not the same as very many people. Most people don't record in the method that I have, but I have my my musical talents and my musical limitations, and I try to work within them and see where they coalesce and make a nice sound together. So if I'm working with a drum track that's a pre-existing drum track, and just laying all my instruments around it, which is the way I work probably 95% of the time, that's not really something that most people do. Most people go in the studio with a band, and they play for hours, and they wait until they get the drum track that they like. So I've made a lot of records, and I have hundreds of pre-existing drum tracks. I play all the instruments, and I know that the drum track that works is what you're always searching for anyway. So if you start with a drum track that works, you're at least, it may not fit exactly what you had in mind for the song initially. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes there's magic there, sometimes it's just a bad mixture. But every time is an experience of recording that I enjoy, and my wife Sally plays bass on most of the stuff, and I play everything else except for the drums, which is what I start with.
Yeah, and you've come upon a method that you can, on one hand, be very, very prolific, because you really know how to work it, and you can be, you can accomplish a lot, and also you don't have to spend a whole lot of time a lot of money other than your time early on in the process, and I think that's pretty smart.
And the other thing is, I've been working with a lot of these drum tracks for years and years, so I know them, the specific drum tracks inside out. So I've probably done 5 or 6 at least recordings of different songs with the same drum track, and you just find new things in them to sort of inspire what you do, and you hook into them, and it's you're trying to create some sort of divine perfection, and the better you know the terrain, the better off you are in terms of being able to do that. So that's what I'm about, and I enjoy the process, and I enjoy finishing. So
yeah, and I'm sometimes guilty of the not finishing part, and that's something I think I can learn from you too. Or maybe one of the things I learned from you is like, hey, look, it might not be the best thing you've ever done, but a finished product is always better than something that
it's just in the air.
It's just in the air.
Well, the other thing is that sometimes the best sketches don't make the best records, but sometimes like a really, like the original demo for Midnight Train, I think, was pretty bare. I mean, it was really good, but it was not as special as the single turned into. And a lot of these things, you have to leave a space for whoever goes into the studio to cut it for real, to do their thing, and that's easy for me to do. But when I approach things as masters for myself, I fill it up with all the guitars I need and make sure the background vocals are all there and stuff like that. But sometimes, a pretty unspectacular demo that just puts the song across very simply can result in a really good record.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might resonate with somebody else even more than with you.
And that's fine.
Yeah. So a couple times I also had the pleasure of actually performing with you. And, you asked me to be part of the band when you didn't really have to ask me or needed really anybody. But I sure appreciated being asked. And one was really fun. We did the Billy Block show with Stevie Kalinich and with Ellis Hooks.
Yeah, it was a blast.
And that was fun. And I got to play in that. And then we did a benefit for Scat Spring when he fell ill.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a treat to be part of it too, although it was, kind of for a sad reason. But
well, we I like the energy you bring to what I do, so you're welcome to come to the party, because it's always a space for Andreas.
All right. So I appreciate that. So you're kind of, you're a mentor of mine, if you like it or not.
I'll take it.
What were some of your mentors? What are some of the people you like, learn
Well,
from?
my first mentor was a guy named Andrew Lou Goldham, who I met when I was like 16 or 17 years old. And I just hanging around him, I was like completely overwhelmed, because here's the guy who produced Satisfaction, all the Rolling Stones' first 10 records, and really was very key to that sound and all those records, which I loved. And those records were, giving me the roadmap to the other artists who I work with, like Arthur Alexander and Don Covey and Bobby Womack. So, as a young man, I could have done no better than Andrew Oldham. And he was basically in the afterburn of the Rolling Stone experience and the immediate record experience. So he was even less reserved than he might ordinarily have been. But just being around him, seeing how he worked in the studios, just feeling his presence when you're around him, you know why he's, one of the greatest of all time. So that was great. That was really terrific.
And now there's a full circle moment happening right now.
He's executive producer on the record I made with Stevie and just wrote the liner notes. So, bless him for that, for sticking with me so long. And, there are other mentors in there. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't name Don Covey, who basically took Sally and I under his wing and wrote with us and made us part of his band leader. And he was just great. He's just a wonderful friend and a great, obviously an idol of mine, creative talent. Dan Penn was very inspiring to work with because he was obviously a great songwriter and a great artist, but had chosen not to live the quote-unquote artist life and just, like to have a normal existence at home without subjecting himself to the record business too much. And I admired his ability to be able to stick to that and not compromise himself and create really great songs over a long period of time. Steve Cropper, I would consider a major mentor because I've been making records with him since 1992, and we've made a bunch of records and had nothing but fun on them, and he's just a wonderful guy and likes to his playing and his stories, and he's just a great person to have in the room. And when we made the record with Stevie Kalinich just now, he and I finished this record, I asked Steve if he wanted to come over and hear it. And he came over one day and had all sorts of suggestions and was really enthused. And then he was over for like the next 3 days as well. He was pretty much here for, most of the time we were recording the record, where we weren't doing stuff that we needed isolation in the room. We couldn't have anybody else there, like percussion and stuff. But he's been great. He's just a wonderful soul and really talented. I would say Wilson Pickett was an inspiration to play with and to produce and write songs with. But I think that he would take umbrage if I called him a mentor. We were just having fun. Bobby Womack's been great, but I wasn't around him enough to really fully absorb his gift. But I got see enough of it up close to, feel like, I got a sense of what he was doing. B.B. King recorded 4 of my songs with me producing in '91, and then cut another song that I wrote with John Hahn and Sally as a duet with Coco Taylor called Blues Hotel. And then a couple of years later, I was doing a record with Steve Cropper called Dedicated, and we had BB and Shamika doing a duet, and we flew out to Las Vegas to record the two of them together, and it was just one of the most fun experiences of my life, and I think BB got a real kick out of it too. And he's always been very supportive and, just a great guy, so I've been very fortunate to have, some real wonderful people in my corner pulling for me, and considering that I wasn't really part of the music business and the record business per se, I was always an outsider trying to kick doors down. It's very helpful when you have people like that who are independent thinkers, independent artists, not part of the machinery, who you can see how they do it, because it's a whole different thing than being a staff producer for a record company, or having A&R guys who are at your feet because your last 3 records all went gold and platinum. I've had my successes, but they haven't been the kind of successes that attract A&R men, because they're not interested in the kind of music that I make by and large, because they don't know enough about it to really work on those kind of records, most A&R men. So whenever I get a record deal for a record, it's a fluke, and I treat it as such, and whoever is at the record company who ends up paying for it, I am heavily indebted to, because a lot of these records could just as easily have laid on the cutting room floor. I mean, the Wilson Pickett record, we had a couple of record companies interested in that, but it took some time. It didn't happen overnight, and I think we made the best choice. The Steve Cropper records, there's a guy named Stu Fine who was our A&R man with the record Dedicated, and also the most recent one, Fire It Up, at a different label at Mascot, who's been extremely supportive and really helpful, and it's a joy to have someone like that at a record company. But you don't necessarily get more than one or two people at record companies who are into your work, because corporations are just, they make a different kind of record than I make, and they're not really interested in this kind of music. So it's not, it's not the easiest thing to find somebody who's ready to lay out some dough and a marketing plan to get your record to see the people. It's 9 times out of 10 it's not going to be the case, so you have to be prepared for that. I've been doing this since 1975, so I'm pretty prepared for it. I'm used to, getting rejected by more people than I get embraced by, but I've been fortunate enough to have enough people embracing my music at record companies to make sure that they keep coming out.
Yeah. And so part of what you've been doing was also kind of either reference or employ or pay tribute to some of the musicians and artists and songwriters that have influenced you, like producing those tribute records, or hiring Wayne Jackson and David Hood and Spooner Oldham and Steve and people like that. How important has that been to you to kind of maybe give them other opportunities that they otherwise might not have? Because I know all those guys really appreciate that.
Well,
too.
It's an everybody wins situation. I mean, these are the kind of records I really enjoy making. So when I do, I love to record my own songs, of course, but when I do a record of Otis Blackwell songs and I get to pull in Paul Rodgers and Steve Cropper and Frank Black and Graham Parker to appear on it, that's great. And, if I get to, make some money for Otis Blackwell's widow, great, and if, I get to make a record with Steve Cropper. I don't know who else is going to make a record with Steve Cropper. I'm sure there are a lot of people who would like to, but not everybody can pull it off and make a record with Steve that he likes, that he feels good about.
That gets nominated for a Grammy.
And that a record company is going to say, yeah, we believe in this record. We believe in this artist, and we want to put out a record by Steve Cropper. That's a leap of faith, So I'm happy to be the midwife to those leaps of faith, because it's a big win for me and it's a big win for everybody involved.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this for me.
My pleasure.
Maybe, and I don't even know how we could do that, because I feel like I almost need to leave the room, but would you mind just saying a couple, 3 things about me?
Oh, okay.
Whatever, I don't know, either a couple things that we've done together, or not necessarily, musically either. It can be just like, so if like Dylan was listening, like, you can tell him about his dad.
All right. Well, there's, I've got a lot of situations where I'm the youngest person in the room, and that's wonderful. It's great, but it's nice to find someone younger than yourself who you enjoy being around and who doesn't drive you crazy and who makes a contribution if there's a musical situation. And Andreas has been that guy for me because, when I first started writing with him, I tried to give him as much advice and confidence in his work, and I think he took it to heart, and he's become quite good at what he does, and quite successful in his field. And I'm continually impressed by the quality of the work and the quality of the people that he works with, and his ambition. He's a real go-getter, and one of the hardest things to have in this business is an attitude that you've got work to do and no one's going to stop you from doing that work. So Andreas, my hat's off to you, and thanks for being my friend.
Well, thanks for being my friend. It means the world to me. You and Sally too, obviously. But just really, you opened the door to me when you didn't have to, or when it's just like.
Well, some of these things are just meant to.
You're a little responsible for me being able to, grow roots over here for sure.
Well, that's good. We may be visiting you in Switzerland, growing some roots there. You never know.
Yeah.